Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth and final webinar in our series Visegrad Lessons for Georgia. My name is Alexander Kafka and I'm pleased to moderate today's discussion. We are very grateful to International Visegrad Fund for supporting this initiative. Over the course of our webinars, we have examined how the Visegrad Group has managed to preserve cooperation despite political disagreements. In our first discussion, we focused on the structural and institutional foundations of this resilience. In the second and third webinars, we explored how this unity functions in specific sectors, from science and environmental cooperation to business and economic ties. Today, we move from analysis to synthesis and hopefully to action. The key question for this final roundtable is not only what worked in the Visegrad case, but what can realistically work in the Georgia's context. Georgia faces a different institutional environment, but similar risks: deepening political polarization and growing uncertainty affecting long-term planning. Can cooperation beyond politics be sustained in such conditions? What concrete steps can be taken? With that, let me turn to first question. Over the course of our discussions, we have identified mechanisms that allow the Visegrad Group to sustain cooperation. Can we identify a core principle across political, scientific, and economic cooperation that keeps these relationships functional, even in times of tension? Importantly, I would welcome your opinions on whether the Visegrad 4 model, or rather its elements, can be used elsewhere, and in our region in particular. Pavel, please.
So my name is Pavel Havlicek and I work for a Prague-based think tank called Association for International Affairs. What really helps us in Central Europe to keep cooperation despite difficult times, difficult situations, sometimes politically on different levels, it's definitely the level of pragmatism and realization that we are all interested in maintaining the good neighborly relations. I remember that still, and this was say 4 or 5 years ago, actually at the high-level governmental level, there was a very tense situation in between Czechia and Poland regarding some of the mining in the border regions. But again, I think it was really through the civil society engagement and engagement at different levels that really we helped overcome. Nowadays, similarly, the relationship between some of the countries of the region, and we can see that in the relations between Poland and Hungary and others, that sort of changes over time. I think this is really something that is very genuine, and it just overcomes these political turbulences that just come and go, so to say, but the personal relations, they are here to stay. So I think this is one of the features that we can recommend from the region of Central Europe, and I think that has worked rather well over, say, the last 35 years since the fall of communism. Thank you.
I'm Magda Jakubowska. I'm with Visegrad Insight Respublika Foundation. It's not my first time here in those seminars, and I really enjoyed it. And I want to reiterate what Pavel Havlicek has just said. Among others, we cooperate very often, and true is that this V4 model of cooperation and building the network, building the ties, on the people-to-people level, but also on this more economic and entrepreneurial cooperation is also very important. This B2B, B2G, to some extent, relationships are also very much useful within the V4 cooperation. Our economies are quite dependent one on the other. We have common suppliers, common also exports, cooperation with Germany, France, and further. And therefore, even on a small scale business, this ties are very much developed and needed on everyday basis. And therefore, I think that in many aspects, for example, using also the capacities of the Visegrad Fund, where smaller enterprises as SMEs and social enterprises are welcomed to work together, also gives a platform of cooperation when political challenges are there behind us. So thank you.
My name is Gabor Turi. I'm from the Institute of World Economics. Political situation is very turbulent in that time. So especially in Hungary, Czechia, and Slovakia, and yes, also in Poland. So there are parties, ruling parties from the left and the right side, but above this issue, we should create common values and common goals. The common agricultural policy, the common interest in the EU issues, but it's very hard. On the other hand, there are many Hungarian companies buy Czech companies and Czech companies buy Hungarian companies, and this relationship and this cooperation is very good for our economic level. And also this Visegrad cooperation is very important, that we can meet together and discuss our problems. So if you are in a public administration or relations with public administration, they can use our ideas or our results.
Łukasz Ogronik, Polish Institute of International Affairs. I work for the Europeans program at PISM, which is a public Polish think tank. Thank you for inviting me. As there's no political glue within the V4, we know the circumstances of the current crisis within the Visegrad group, but it used to be when the times that Visegrad countries were backing Eastern Partnership countries, including Georgia. There were several statements in 2021, for instance, V4 as a platform of regional cooperation, backing the steps of countries like Georgia towards the European Union, for instance. It's not the case anymore. However, the current Visegrad cooperation relies on institutions like the International Visegrad Fund, mentioned by Magdalena Kubowska, and IVF is financing a tool called Civil Servant Mobility Program, CSMP, which is co-organized by think tanks within the Think Visegrad platform. And the aim is to organize study trip for public servants from countries like Georgia, Eastern Partnership countries, and Western Balkan countries, and to share experience on different levels and on different fields, thematic fields. And there are public statistics on the website or on the Think Visegrad platform that since 2014, just let me have a look, 540 public servants from these countries made a study trip to V4 countries. And among them, there were 28 civil servants from Georgia. So thanks to IVF, which last year celebrated 25 years of its existence, and which has, as well as I know, the larger budget, roughly 11 million euros per year, from last year too. Such projects like sharing experience with Georgians, despite political circumstances and crises within the V4 can be possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lukasz. I think you have brought a very useful, practical point.
Hello, my name is Andrej BAN. I am journalist and also activist from Slovakia. I am journalist for 40 years. I was in 2008 in Georgia during the war with Moscow, Russia. I want to join my experience as a civic activist with people who vote for the far right and extremist parties, which is, I guess, the problem in Slovakia, in Hungary, and in Czechia too. I want to suggest something. My experience is following. It's very important to speak with the people who vote for these parties, because in many times, in many cases, these people are not extremist and far-right supporters. These people are, in many times, confused people, which are voting for these parties because they are very angry for the system. And it's important, I think, also in your country, in Georgia, to make the discussions in the forgotten regions of Georgia with the people who are living there, because they don't know any one politician personally. They don't know anyone civic activist personally. And my experience after 4 years with these discussions, we have had discussions with more than 10,000 people in Slovakia. So my experience is that it's very important to speak personally, directly with these people, not through internet, not through online platforms, not through social media, but personally. That's my experience.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very important suggestion, and I absolutely agree personally with this. Marzenna, please.
Yes, hello. I'm senior fellow at Visegrad Insight. And first, I would like to share some remarks about how this Visegrad cooperation has functioned in the past. So since all these countries joined the European Union, at this time, there were some proposals by politicians and by regional activists to strengthen with help of EU funds the region, also in terms of transport networks. So this has not taken place. So I would say we have lost a lot of time until better, where the conditions for political cooperations were better than now, so that we did not have regional strategy for the Visegrad region in order to improve improve roads connections and improve train connections, and also to improve the economic cooperation. So de facto, this group, this region, this Visegrad region, it does not exist in the European debate as a special force or special entity. There were also no Visegrad recommendations for any EU reforms. So we lost a lot of time when the political situation was much better than it is now, because now we have de facto in Slovakia, Czechia, and especially in Hungary, very anti-European and nationalist governments. In Poland, we still have a pro-EU, pro-democratic government, but we have a president which is absolutely from the opposite side of the political spectrum. So he is very EU skeptic. He is very, very nationalist, and especially Hungary is because of Orban is presented in the media, in the public, in Poland, as the key traitor of the EU. Yes, so in on political level, at the moment, I do not see any possibilities to strengthen the cooperation between the Visegrad countries. So what can we do? Of course, we can hope that Orban will not win the elections, and this, if he, if he loses the elections, then this would be a very big chance for the Visegrad, for a revival of the Visegrad group, and I think there should be also some preparations for this, to contacts with Tisha, and also that it is not missed when there will be a political change in Hungary, that this will be also used to strengthen the cooperation within the Visegrad countries, and as the situation is so as it is now, then I see, the only possibility, as already mentioned by you, in strengthening civil society cooperation, in strengthening media cooperation, and of course economic relations. This already happens, and my experience from meetings with Visegrad 4 civil society representatives was very, very positive always. And then we feel that we have a lot of common, especially the experience of the communist times. In my opinion, what we could do more is maybe to have more pressure on media. Of course, it is, if this is possible to have it, because we in Poland, we do not have, I don't know how it is in your countries, there are not much news about what's going on in the Visegrad countries. So in Hungary, yes, of course, because of Orban, but I think all these other initiatives, people-to-people initiatives, regional initiatives, the common tasks of civil society, disinformation problems, this could be even much more highlighted. But until there will be no political will on the side of the Visegrad 4 leaders to strengthen the cooperation and to present more visibility. What is our answer to the debates on the future of Europe? What's our answer and position on the energy and the ETS system? So this was in the past, this was a bit formulated because there were five FIFO meetings before the European councils, but they are not there. And so this I think this is a big problem that we do not express towards other EU states. Also our regional interests as countries which only since 1989 joined the market economy and democracy. Thank you.
Matúš Mišík, I work at Communist University Bratislava. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is my first meeting. Thank you very much for doing this because frankly, I really believe that Visegrad needs something like this. We haven't heard much from Visegrad recently because I believe that Visegrad is kind of sort of falling apart. Of course, I'm talking about the political level, at the regional or local level or people's level. I hope things are better, but over the last couple of years, Visegrad group or Visegrad countries are not really that visible, and if they are visible, they're visible in a not in the best way, I would say. Actually, they have earned name of a troublemaker, and most of the time when they have cooperated over last couple of years, it was when they were trying to pursue or create a bigger opposition to some common EU goals. And this wasn't always that all member states, all Visegrad member states wanted to do this. Sometimes we saw some countries, especially Hungary, to try to find or develop a coalition from Visegrad 4 countries to create some kind of a critical mass against the Commission, against the EU. Recently, Orban succeeded in cooperating with Fico's government, but Visegrad 4 is not the same thing as it used to be during the 90s, and also during the 90s and early 2000s. It was very active, mostly because most of the countries wanted it to be active. They had this common goal of getting into the EU, and they were supporting each other on the path. They were supporting Slovakia, especially because Slovakia was the black sheep then of the whole region. But once the Visegrad groups made it into the EU, then they were having hard time to find what they want to really do together. And then during the pandemic years, it kind of faded away, and they even stopped publishing documents a couple of years ago. I haven't checked for a couple of months, but when I did last time, there were no new documents, no nothing. So the cooperation, I'm not sure whether it's actually, and this is going to be probably quite critical, I'm not sure whether this is actually a good blueprint for other regional cooperation. Maybe the Visegrad group can provide lessons how not to do things, actually, maybe more than how to do them. Maybe this is not the best platform to be so critical of Visegrad cooperation, but I really hope that at different levels the cooperation works better. But for me, when I look at the political level, it really looks like the only time Visegrad group has been cooperating over the last couple of years is when somebody tried to create a bigger group of member states who would be critical towards not the EU but the Commission, actually, or the president of the Commission. So this was sometimes very, very personal, actually, from where I'm standing. And I'm not sure whether this is a good base for any kind of cooperation. Thank you.
Very briefly to react to Matusz and also to what was mentioned by Marzenna, I think we need to realize who we are talking to. And this is talking to colleagues from Georgia. So if there is one region that is, on fire these days, this is the region of South Caucasus, right? So I think you colleagues have the best experience in really having not always easy relations among each other. So in that sense, despite all odds, and I definitely agree with you, Matusz, the center of the Central European region looks like oasis of calmness, and in comparison with South Caucasus. So in that sense, I think still the good practice can be brought here. But I definitely agree with another thing that was mentioned by you, Matusz, and this is that there are no clear answers to what we are facing these days, and while I also was following carefully what Marzenna was mentioning, I think with the fall of Orban regime, this will not end. This is not just on its own the magical wand and one thing that will just bring us all together. I mean, unfortunately, what's happening now in Czechia, but also for quite a while in Slovakia, they're just illustrating that the countries really have not only different interests, but there's a lot of the illiberal tendencies still prevailing, and this will survive the whole potential fall of Orban regime. So my question to all of us is actually, what are the solutions? Okay, we will have TISA, we'll have Peter Magyar, and will it become all sort of easy? No, unfortunately. So we will need to continue investing in things that we mentioned earlier. Magda mentioned some of those additionally to my points, but I think still, despite all odds, I think it's worth sort of sharing with colleagues in Georgia, which is itself having really a lot of problems. Actually, it's more and more isolated. I don't like to see it. We really try to do our best to help integrate the country within the EU, but now the trajectory is complete opposite, actually, unfortunately. But speaking about the neighbor relations, I think it's very important, to keep the channels open, to discuss, to have these coordination platforms, and despite difficult situations, really to exchange on our interests, where we stand, and what we can do together. And the level of pragmatism, and I would like to come back to it. It's really, really important one, because despite Orban not being there, and I have my fingers crossed for that, this will not be easy also in the months and years to come after that.
My name is David Dondua. I'm former Georgian diplomat, currently international diplomat residing in Vienna, representing European Public Law Organization and international organizations here in Austria, and chair of EU Awareness Center, Brussels-based think tank dedicated to promoting European values and supporting Georgia's EU aspirations in other countries in our region. It seems that I am the only Georgian in this room. So what I would like to say now, stemming from our three previous webinar discussions, and from my previous experience working with colleagues from Visegrad, the main lesson, the most important lesson for Georgia to borrow from Visegrad is not the political unity, but the ability to cooperate despite political differences. The Visegrad countries often disagree on major political issues, including relations with Russia, EU policies, migration, rule of law questions, but yet cooperation continues in many areas, because you have learned how to separate political conflicts from practical cooperation. The key principle, therefore, is compartmentalization. So when political disagreements do not stop cooperation in the areas where you see cooperation is mutually beneficial. For us, for Georgia, it's a very important lesson, because our problem is not just a political disagreement per se. So disagreements exist in all democracies. The problem is that political disagreements not often, but almost are blocking cooperation in many sectors. I would say in almost all sectors. So the main lesson for Georgia is that cooperation does not require political unity. What cooperation requires is mechanisms that function even when politics is polarized. And if we still have time, a few words about what I see the realistic, what kind of experience we can transfer from Visegrad to Georgia. So very briefly, what are where I see the transferable areas for Georgia? It's a cooperation between research institutions, which I represent now, and also universities. Although with current education reform in Georgia, even this might be a problem. Second is cooperation, is a business cooperation that continues in most cases regardless of politics. It's not only in our region but worldwide. Experts networks and think tank cooperation, another area. Also sectoral cooperation in the areas like energy, transport, education, I have already mentioned, and informal regional formats and regular meetings. But what I don't see realistic is that the EU frame, that what is not easily transferable, it is the EU framework which provides funding and legal stability for Georgia. It's not. It won't be available for a long period, unfortunately. What we also lack is pre-accession consensus that all Visegrad countries had about the EU and NATO membership. And last but not least, the strong institutional stability that in your case existed before polarization intensified. Therefore, Georgia cannot copy the Visegrad model as a whole, but it can adapt to the logic of cooperation.
I'll try to be very quick, Alexander. Sorry. It's just like we had this moment where we mentioned values and common values during this conversation. And I think this is important to say that we don't develop those values. Those values are there. And this that we have maybe not with every government or not with every leader in V4, but we still aim to stick to the values that that have already been there, created, and the code is there with the European Union. I think that this is very important that we stick to that, and there is like this guidance, this path that we aim to. Although the challenges are there, as we already mentioned a number of times in this conversation, but still something that connects Visegrad countries was the aim of getting to the EU, being on the safe side of every, I don't know, question of the rule of law, human rights, and so on and so forth. And this is what we have to continue and aim to, even if we diverted from the path any of the countries, any of the leader. So this is something that I see important in that case.
I just wanted to go back to what the data mentioned. I think this was really interesting to compare, contrast, the regional component in our cooperation. And of course, we also understand that this is much more difficult, for the South Caucasian countries, to follow the same track. We, in a modern history or in a nearest past decades, let's say, we were not in such a difficult situation that some of the countries of the regions are now. We haven't had wars with each other. We were not killing each other as other Azerbaijanis and Armenians. Now with the Georgia government, which many people are characterizing as a pro-Russian government, including myself, it's a very difficult landscape. But what I think Data was describing very rightly is that sometimes the desired goal is not to create a political unity. Sometimes it's just impossible. And I think we are still in this situation, maybe also in Central Europe, but definitely in South Caucasus. But the more is important actually to dissect, those two and to focus on what can be actually achieved, and where the neighbor relations are actually useful for everybody, where this is a win-win situation. And in that regard, this is actually a useful logic that Data actually introduced, and I very much subscribe to this, because when I was speaking about this pragmatism, this was essentially trying to capture that, and I think you very rightly described the areas such as education, people-to-people ties, transport, it's often mentioned, in that regard, where everybody benefits when there is cooperation, and to look for these kind of issues. This might be one of our, maybe the topic for the next fifth seminar, potentially. So if there is any, so these are definitely interesting areas where we can focus on doing more things together. Thank you.
What Georgia could do in practical terms, I just now briefly put down three possible steps that can be done in current situation. Honestly, it's not that what I really believe that it is doable, but let's say it's my wishful thinking. That can be done if there is a political will from the side of the government and from the side of the opposition as well. So, what are the realistic steps that we can propose? First is to create a platform for sectoral cooperation, where government, opposition, experts, businesses, academia can collaborate on specific sectors that they see are important in any case, whatever political situation is, which is first and foremost energy security, the economy, environment, education. On most of these topics, we had special webinars previously, and these ideas came to me looking back to our discussions. Second is to develop a cross-party agreement on strategic sectors in which all major political actors agree not to politicize certain areas. Again, same, energy security, infrastructure, connectivity, EU integration, but I'm not sure about this last one. And third is to focus on small and practical cooperation projects that more easily produce visible results. As we diplomats and know that trust is often built not through political dialogue, but through successful, tangible joint projects. So it's not therefore, trust is usually not a starting point, but it is a result of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dato. Thank you very much for your participation. I think we had done a very useful work.
Thank you, Alexander. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Madloba, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.